What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Are you serious? Are you kidding me?
No.
We are pregnant!
Mike and I met the summer of 2011, and we just kind of hung out and started dating maybe a month after we met each other. He was down for an internship for school, so we ended up doing long distance dating once he went back up to New Hampshire to finish schooling, and we got married about 4 years later. We both knew we loved to travel, so we thought to take advantage of the time while we don't have kids and just travel. So we enjoyed our time traveling all over the US and over Europe. But we knew the strongest desire of our hearts was to have kids. And so about 3 years later, we started trying, and we fell pregnant very quickly. We were very excited. We went to my 10-week ultrasound and waited in anticipation. And during the ultrasound, my OB, she said that she doesn't see an embryo. She sees that my uterus is filled with all this tissue. It's about the size of a grapefruit. It's bigger than what a pregnancy should be at this point. And she wanted me to go for more testing for my HCG and come back for an ultrasound the next week, and I was diagnosed with a complete molar pregnancy. Molar pregnancies happen in about 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 1,500. Some are partial molar pregnancies, some are complete molar pregnancies. Mine was complete, meaning that my egg just happened to have no DNA to it. It just was a fluke egg. It was fertilized, but instead of forming an embryo, it formed this tissue called gestotrophoblastic disease. 1/5 of gestotrophoblastic disease can be cancer, so luckily mine was confirmed it's not, but they wanted to monitor me for another 6 months to make sure it doesn't come back. It was hard, getting your hopes up for this baby, only to find out that, well, it's not a baby and it's this tissue. My sister, she asked when we're going to start to try again, and we said right away, and she said, I'm so nervous. And I said, why? And she said, I'm just so nervous. And so I said, okay, well, I won't tell you until I'm after our 12-week ultrasound. And she said, oh, good. And I was like, what? Because we're super close, and I just decided to just hold it. We got the clear to try again, and we fell pregnant very fast. At about 8.5 weeks, I started to cramp and started to bleed a little bit. I reached out to my OB friend to see if this could be a miscarriage. She said, if you would start to pass lumps and clumps, then you will know. And later that night, I started to pass more and more, and it was confirmed that I had a miscarriage. We went out to a hibachi grill after our first miscarriage a couple days after, and I just remember just sitting there just kind of processing all of this and thinking like, I'm 30 years old now, and if we want to have a couple kids, like I'm getting kind of old, and I was sitting there and the birthday music went on, and Mike asked whose birthday is it, and this lady next to us, she said, oh, it's my son's birthday, and Mike asked how old, and she said, oh, 15, and Mike said it was Carrie's birthday last week, and she said, oh, how old are you? And I said, I turned 30, and she said, oh, any kids? And we said, no. And she said, well, let me tell you, 32 is the best age to start having kids. And I was like, 32? Like, that just kind of stuck out of my head. And it was like she read my mind. And anyway, the night continued, and I just was still, upset about what happened, just kind of processing it all, like, God, what are you thinking in this? Are you sad that, I lost this baby, or kind of where are you in this? And anyway, the tab comes, and she grabs it, and she says, I got this. And it was like, for me, that was God telling me that he was right there.
We got pregnant again, and this time I wanted to monitor my HCG to make sure that the baby was growing appropriately. A couple weeks into it, my HCG just was not rising appropriately, and so we did some ultrasounds and noticed some growth from 1 week to the next, but at the last ultrasound it was confirmed it was going to be another miscarriage.
After a second miscarriage, I just assumed that, people would wonder if we're pregnant again. And so I also just didn't want to worry like my family, I know that they knew how much we wanted to have kids, and I just didn't want to bear the weight of any of their emotions, I guess. So I just didn't tell them until after that second miscarriage. And my sister, she said she's sorry, but she also said that she's not surprised. She said, I just had this gut feeling, Carrie. I watched this pastor at our church, and he said that he had several miscarriages, and he had 3 or something. And she said, I just knew that was going to be you, Carrie.
I reached out to a fertility clinic who completed a reoccurring pregnancy loss panel and did some other internal testing to see if there was anything structurally or wrong in my blood work. And the only thing that came back was that I had thyroid antibodies. And when I asked what I can do for that, they said to take thyroid medicine. And I said, well, I've been on thyroid medicine my entire life. What else can I do? And they just said nothing. Just keep taking your medicine and keep trying.
I miscarried again, and she said, Carrie, it was 4, it's actually 4. I just couldn't tell you that at the time. She's like, I just knew it was. And she's not the type to just say all these prophetic type words or anything like that, but she just had this gut feeling. She encouraged us that, after that, you guys are going to be fine. And even with other people, she said that they'll be okay. She just had this confidence and this faith that I really just needed.
We took 6 months off of trying, just thinking maybe it wasn't God's timing. During that time, I looked into the correlation between these thyroid antibodies and reoccurring pregnancy loss, and there was some more information on the autoimmunity part and reoccurring pregnancy loss. There was one particular test I wanted to take, which was called natural killer cells, but to test this, they were at centers that weren't in this state, and they were also very expensive. So I made a list of additional tests that I wanted to get done, and I brought it up to the fertility specialists, and they said that the testing for natural killer cells is not clearly beneficial and not enough studies have been on it, and so there's really nothing more we can do. I got second and third opinions, and they said that I got the gold standard blood work.
So we gave it one last shot.
We were pretty heartbroken. Our dreams were crushed. A friend reached out and said that she would love to carry a baby for us. We were so touched by that. However, we just had a little bit of faith left that we could carry our own.
We went on a vacation to Cancun, and we met this guy named Jeff who shared his miraculous healing story about basically how he used faith in God that healed his bone marrow. He was sent home to die, and he got healed. And so we became friends with him, and he became somebody that encouraged us in our faith during this journey.
One Friday night, his friend, who was a pastor, I think his name was Pastor Charles, he was doing a Facebook Live, kind of an encouraging message for people. He told me that I should watch it and that, it may be encouraging to us. So I turned it on, and during that message, he asked if anyone needed prayer. So I did. I typed in the box, and I told him, explained our situation about we had just had our 4th miscarriage, 5th loss. And he said he wanted to pray for me, so pray for us. So he called, and he prayed over the phone for us. And then, so that was it. Time had passed. Several months went by, and just out of the blue, he reached out and left me a voicemail saying that the Lord had, put a word on his heart specifically for us. And basically what that word was is that, although, you guys have gone through lots of heartache and trials, and that things have just not gone your way, that to be encouraged, because specifically the next 6 months, our fortune's going to change, and that God's going to bring good things to fruition for us, and to be excited. And so I was initially skeptical, because I was like, does this guy, does he say this to, I don't know him very well, he doesn't know me very well, so I didn't know if, did this guy also tell the same message to like 50 other people? I didn't know, so I reached out to Jeff, and he said that, I asked him that question, like, does he do this a lot, and does he, do you think he sent the same message to a lot of people? And he said, no, I don't believe so, and no, he doesn't do that a lot, and that to receive it in faith. And so from there, I went and I actually reached out to Pastor Charles, and I just asked him, how he got that word, if it was specifically for us, and asked him about it. And he said that he was going through a time of prayer and fasting, and that God specifically put that word, on his heart for us during that time. So I was starting to, that kind of it was pretty amazing to me, and I started to kind of get excited and have hope and kind of have faith that we were going to have a child again.
I was part of a support group on Facebook of women from all over the world who struggled with recurrent pregnancy loss. And this is a picture of women in Europe who all got tested for natural killer cells. There was only a few doctors in the US that does this testing, and I knew it was time to pull the trigger on it.
Hashimoto's is an autoimmune thyroid condition where the woman has got antibodies against her own thyroid, and you have antibodies to your thyroid. And this is a very important issue and could play a vital role in your miscarriages. So I want you to listen. There are cells in the uterine lining of all women. They're called natural killer cells. All women have got them. I was the first to discuss them in the 90s. Natural killer cells travel from your bone marrow to your uterine lining every month. And they increase in concentration so that at the point that the embryo is supposed to attach to the wall of the uterus, they start to release growth factors that then attract the roots into the embryo, into the uterine lining, and allow it to form the placenta, which is the lifeline of the babies. All women must have and do have natural killer cells. In some women, and this includes 50% of women who've got thyroid antibodies, these natural killer cells become toxic. They either destroy it before the woman knows she's even pregnant, so she loses the pregnancy so early she thinks she's infertile, but she's really having many miscarriages, and she's not really infertile, or this damages the roots of the embryo, and the embryo loses steam and it limps along, and then it's lost a few days or weeks later. It's very possible that you have natural killer cell activation. If I'm right, we can fix it. And we can easily get the problem out of the way and help you have a baby.
I finally had a diagnosis. I got treatment to suppress my overactive immune system. I remember mentioning that I was getting treatment to the fertility specialist down here, and they said to get off the treatment and that it won't work. I got pregnant, and that day we saw double rainbows, and that week all over Facebook from people all over the world were posting pictures of rainbows on their news feed. My coworker telling me about a rainbow, my dad telling me. That was really God's confirmation to us. HCG was rising appropriately. He was growing on the ultrasounds, and I was growing.
Get it, girl! Good job! I see a little boy! We really? Oh my God! No way! No! Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh!
You might want to close your eyes. It'll take some time adjusting. Welcome to your life. You're everything you'll someday be. my shoulders. There's laughter in the air. You are the answer to every midnight prayer. You're mine to love. We have all been waiting on you. You're mine to love.
Son was born a week and a half before my 32nd birthday, and Mike was 32 years old.
It took some time to wait.
Oh my goodness. Oh, you did good.
You're mine to love. You might want to take your time, taking all this technicolor. Yeah. We're on your side. Let us be the ones you need. There's a life on my shoulder, laughter in the air. You are the answer to all those midnight prayers. You're mine to love. We have all been waiting on you. You're mine to love. Come into these open arms. It took some time.
I'm just sitting here with these two ladies. This lady on the left here, she had 4 miscarriages before, and this is her.
I'm an only child.
She's the daughter, and they just want to share an encouraging word.
Don't give up. Rh negative blood, the first one survives, unless you know. So you've got to know your bodies. Don't count on the doctor to tell you. Just do your research. Go get second, third, fourth opinions.
Absolutely.
And you know what I got.
During this whole thing, I think a big battle for both of us was prayer, and what's the purpose of having faith and believing for something if God's will is going to happen anyways. That was the struggle, because we were praying and we had lots of faith, and we that we're going to have a child, and we just kept miscarrying, and we read verses, and people would tell us, just keep believing and have faith, and that got frustrating, where I think my prayer life went cold, because I just kind of felt in my heart, well, if God's will is going to happen anyways, what's the purpose of praying other than being obedient? Because the Bible says, by all, with all things, pray about everything, and it says pray continuously. There's, other than just being obedient to God, and just praying because He tells us to pray. We were both having trouble understanding, well, what's the purpose of believing and having faith in for something to happen?
And we could believe in God and trust in His plan, that His plan is better than what our plan might be. But when our human desire is still that, it was just really hard for us to just, what do we do with that,
Mm-hmm. So I think we came to a place where our prayers changed. We were obviously praying for a kid, but ultimately we were praying that whatever God's will would happen. We were hoping that it would result in us having a baby, because that was just truly the desire of our heart.
But I remember too also praying, God, change my heart if this is not your will.
So I guess the overall encouragement, we want to give to people is, obviously if God tells you, and puts on your heart that like you're meant to have a kid, pray for that, have faith in that. But obviously it doesn't happen for everyone. I mean, we could have easily we were fortunate enough to get the desire of our heart, and we were able to, have a kid. But we could have very well been on the other end of that, where we prayed and tried, and we may have been in a point where we just weren't fortunate to have a kid. And then that's when I think, you have to just believe and have faith that God is going to change your heart, and that's something good, that He has something better for you down the road. Whether that's adoption, whether it's fostering, whether it's something completely different. I think the purpose that we learned in this is just have faith in God's plan.
Mm-hmm. And during it too, I realized that if that was to be His plan for us, He would you know, God will give us the desires of our heart according to his will. And so I just knew that my desire would be so, like he would intervene and he would bring me that joy. So I think too in it, just know that his plan is good for you. And we just want to share our story so that we can in some way maybe help someone.